Today we've got another ProRevenge story about everyone's favorite topic, parking cars. We'll get into that one in just a bit, but first, my ex constantly locked me out of the bathroom, so I took matters into my own hands. I was with my ex for a while. It was an unhappy relationship. I had bladder control issues and IBS. Whenever I needed to go to the bathroom, they would run in first and take their sweet time just to irritate me and make me suffer. It went on for a long time, and one day I just about had it. We had 2 cats and 2 litter boxes. One day, he went running to the bathroom, and I was just playing on his phone and plucking his face hair, and refused to let me go, so I decided I would just go poop in the cat's litter box. Not only was it a big poop, but I also peed a little. The cats literally wouldn't use that litter box after, and then my ex came and was investigating it and saw, and he goes, "Whoa, they pooped a lot. No wonder they want their box cleaned." And I just sat there and watched him clean up my crap and pee. That was near the end of our relationship and he never found out. Edit. My ex and I were together for 4 years and he was a gamer and pothead. When he would run to the bathroom, he would take his phone, Nintendo Switch, in with him. Okay, so a lot to unpack here. Number 1, how are you together 4 years if he's not respecting your IBS and running to the bathroom so that you can't go? And number 2, what on God's green earth did you eat that was so bad that your fecal matter was driving away the cats from using the box? God, I can't even imagine the smell of that. Shawan770 commented, "Somewhere those cats are still telling the tale of the day the giant marked our territory. Probably why they won't use that box anymore. You asserted dominance in the most primal way possible." Lunch Money TX responded, "I worked at a place where one of the co-workers' nicknames was Catbox Bob. Bob and his wife got a new kitten, and Bob thought it would be hilarious to take a huge dump in the cat box. His thought was that his wife would be worried, confused, if the kitten had a poop the size of itself. At some point, I guess Bob would laugh and confess what really went down. Literally. So Bob takes off his drawers, gets in position hovering over the litter box, and starts to materialize his plan. His wife happened to open up the door where Bob was mid-poop and freaked out. The joke was on him when he got caught. Also, hello everybody, my name is Brendan, and if you guys enjoy these revenge videos, it would be awesome, if you left a like or commented down below if you're listening to our podcast. Now then, our next story is, steal my skillet, I'll steal it back and put you in between a rock and a hard place. Simple and quick, my cousin stole a skillet I got from an old friend of my dad's. Found out about it when I saw it in one of his pics he posted. Don't know how he got it, but I was ticked. I knew where he lived, and while it was hours away, I wanted my skillet back. Recruited a friend who had certain skills, and off we went. Cousin lived in an apartment, and I knew what time he was gone. Place was cheap and didn't have CCTV. Friend did his thing and got inside. He found the skillet, which apparently Cousin left soaking in the sink. We stopped by a couple places and ate at a restaurant and went home. Cousin visited a couple of weeks later, and I feigned cleaning my place. He knew I made a stink of my missing skillet, and he acted as if he wasn't the snake that stole it. As he was chatting up some friends, I made a loud noise and showed everyone my found skillet. Made a big show of where I found it and was thanking everyone and anyone for the discovery. Cousin looked like he'd swallowed fecal matter. He did make a stink about thinking someone broke into his house. He can't accuse me of it because he'd have to admit to stealing my skillet. If he did, his parents would put him in a world of hurt. I mean, pretty cut and dry here. He stole from you, you retaliated accordingly, and, now ring the shame bell, my friends. Knit Sanity responded, "Very similar story a few weeks ago about a sister stealing a blinged up belt. The best petty revenge is the one where you can let the other person know what you did, but there's no way they can tell anyone." Then Knitsanity goes on to post, "Mine was from decades ago, sharing a student house, 6 girls total, 2 small under-counter fridges, common in the UK in the olden days, 3 girls to a fridge. One housemate was a nightmare in all respects. The not her fridge was behind the door, so you got banged by people coming into the kitchen. The number of times I bumped her accessing not her fridge. Ugh. I knew she was stealing food. I put a note on my tub of Flora, if you know you know, that said something along the lines of, 'Oi, you thieving C-word, buy your own effing stuff, bench.' She could never say that she had seen my note because she had no reason to be in that fridge and certainly not opening my Flora. Very petty of me, but we were all students." Our next story is, "Trip my girlfriend at a movie theater? Okay, enjoy the twist ending I'm about to spoil for you. Years ago, my girlfriend, now wife, and I went to see Mickey Blue Eyes in the theater. We were standing in line, patiently awaiting our turn to buy tickets, when a guy pushed his way through, actually shoving people to get to the counter. Everyone started complaining, but instead of apologizing, he said, "6 cents starts in 5 minutes. If you're seeing something else, you have time," as though that excused being physical or jumping the line. My girlfriend ended up falling to the ground and hit her head against a chair. She got up with a cut on her chin, but otherwise was okay. A lot of people stepped forward to check on her, but not the jerk who pushed her. He got to the front, ordered his ticket for 6 cents, and walked toward the usher. I made sure my girlfriend was okay, sitting on a chair, and then I made a beeline for the guy. My girlfriend thought I was going to start a fight, which is weird since she knows I've never hit anyone in my adult life, but I had a better plan in mind. See, she and I had seen 6 Cents the weekend prior, and it had one of the best twist endings in movie history. Don't read any further if you haven't seen the movie, but plan to. So I walked toward the guy and said, "Hey, you," in an angry voice. He stopped short and turned to face me, taken aback. "What?" he asked. So I clenched my fists, looked him in the eyes, and then relaxed and smiled. I said, in a soft voice so no one else would hear me, "Malcolm is dead the whole time. No one sees or hears him but the kid. But Malcolm doesn't realize it until the final scene. Enjoy the film." Then I smiled and walked away, and I heard him say behind me, "Dude, what the freak, man?" Thankfully, my girlfriend wasn't hurt. The cut wasn't even bleeding when I returned to her a minute later, and we enjoyed Mickey Blue Eyes. Not a great movie, no, but funny. The cast alone made the film worth watching, but we had a great time, even with the script problems, because my girlfriend kept looking at me while we were watching the film and saying, "Malcolm is dead the whole time." Then we would giggle silently. Good times. Good times. Come on, man, no one likes a spoiler. Just because you know that Darth Vader is Luke's father doesn't mean that everyone else does. Whoops. Sorry. Cut! The Art of Wasting Time responded, "Friends and I are waiting in line to see a Star Trek film. Titanic was also in theaters. We were discussing if we wanted to see Titanic next week, and I said no. It's too depressing, what with the ship sinking. Teenage girl whips around and yells, 'Spoilers!' I look her in the eyes and say, 'History, pay attention in school.'" Our next story is, I tricked a computer store customer. Long time ago, I was doing part-time in a retail computer store. One day, a customer brought in a mouse complaining it was defective. I noticed it had an obvious bent connector. This was an older type of connection that's circular with pins that you need to reasonably line up with the port to connect. I explained the problem. The pins need to line up to the holes. And be careful not to force it in if the pins aren't lined up because you might damage it. I bent the pins slightly back, demonstrated how to connect, and showed it working. She gets defensive and says it's the mouse's fault for being hard to connect. Kinda right, and wants me to replace it with a new mouse. We go back and forth a few times, where I explain there's nothing defective with her mouse, and she blames something and restates her demand. Eventually, she just says, "I don't care," and wants a manager. At this point, a new mouse isn't worth the effort, and she probably won't break the new one now. I tell her I'll be back and take the mouse into the back repair area to do a swap. There, I noticed intact, discarded packaging for the exact mouse and get an idea. After wiping down her mouse, I take one of the boxes and repackage and re-sticker it. When I bring it to the front, I hand it to the customer saying, "Here's your mouse." After giving a self-satisfied smirk, she takes it and leaves the store. So I do get the petty revenge aspect of this, not sure about the legalities of that. Can you actually do this? If you know the answer, please comment down below. I would love to know the truth behind this tomfoolery. Government Either 3420 responded, "When cordless phones came out, a phone tech told me that he got a service call to a lady who complained her phone wasn't working. He got there and it was working fine. She agreed and he left. He got called back later. Again, it was working. He asked her to demonstrate what she did with the phone, so she picked it up from the base station, dialed a number, and walked out of the room with the phone in her hand. As she exited the room, she flipped off the light switch and the phone quit working. She had plugged the base unit into an outlet controlled by the light switch. The lady refused to accept this explanation, so the tech plugged the base unit into another outlet and just left, laughing. Our next story is, her ex-fiancé hacked my girlfriend's email, ended up in a padded room. 20 years ago, dating via eHarmony, met a great lady who lived 100-ish miles from the smallish town I lived in. Set up for her to come visit me, and things went crazy. My date called me screaming and crying, asking me why I was leading her on, why I was a cheater. I had no idea what she was talking about or how she was being fed such a made-up story. My date told me that a woman had just yelled at her on the phone, calling her a skank and a marriage wrecker. This lady, falsely, claimed to be married to me and was shocked to see our emails. My date was ticked at me and demanded answers. She and I quickly figured out that ex-fiancé had set up her email account and she had not changed her password. This is going to sound fanciful, but 100% true. I used to work for a nonprofit and the chief of police in our smaller town was on my board. He called the ex-fiancé on speaker with me in the room, told him he had evidence of computer hacking, a federal crime, 3 to 8 years in federal prison, etc. I knew he didn't have federal jurisdiction and did my best not to chuckle. Ex-fiancé put himself on a voluntary psychological hold for the next 72 hours, thinking it would afford him a temporary insanity alibi. No charges were ever planned. Thank you, Chief Fulton. Well, as they say, sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know, and if you can put on a convincing enough act, you can get people to fold up like a wet tent in no time at all. I Aim to Sneeze responded, "Aw man, my girlfriend is going through a similar situation. Her ex created a fake email with her son's name and gave himself admin access to her Apple and Google family. He set up most of the internet stuff, so she didn't notice for a long time. She thought she was going insane. Emails she didn't remember sending and emails she knew she sent never arriving. Ring camera footage mysteriously disappeared, most notably the one showing him blocking her car and calling her a tramp at the top of his lungs, then trying to force his way into her home, and he always seemed to know where she was. She doubted her sanity so much it caused her to end up in the psych ward for 3 weeks. People throw the term gaslighting around a lot, but this is what it looks like. I was really hoping you had some legal recourse we could copy, because after he got arrested for stalking, he's now suing her for attorney's fees. I don't wish harm on anyone in the world, but I just want him to disappear. She calls me frantically all the time, worried her doors aren't locked enough or the alarm system's going to fail. She hates being alone. She's always worried he's going to come get her." Our next story is, Karen tries to reserve twice the seats at Barnes & Noble. Not on my watch, Karen. My local Barnes & Noble in Texas is not that large. The cafe has seating for about 30, tops, most of those at 6 to 7 tables away from the window. We also only have one counter, across from the barista station, with seats for 4. The counter is immediately to the left as soon as you enter the cafe area. These are close to the window and are coveted seats if you can't get a table alongside the window. Being a B&N nerd, I always know when to show up and get a good table close to the windows. I managed to snag one of those tables, as always, with the window to my right, the counter seating directly in front of me, and the register/serving area to my right. I was happy to get a window-side table, as I often cannot, and not have to sit at the counter with its 4 stools. As I was enjoying my coffee and magazines, I noticed that the 4 stools at the counter were only half occupied. There was a tallish 50-something blonde and her 17-ish daughter 2 stools away. Trouble is, they had plopped their clothing/backpacks on the other stools, as to take up 4 stools instead of the 2 they needed. The daughter was perusing the store and wasn't even using her seat, but mom had them taken with backpacks and a purse to save them. I actually saw a couple come in and were denied a seat at the counter due to mom telling them those seats were occupied. When daughter eventually returned, mom seemed to celebrate her victory with her. After a second time I saw this happen, I put away my magazines and decided to have some fun. When a third, fatter, rednecky couple come in and were driven away from Karen, I smiled and waved them over. I offered them my seat. I was taking up one seat at a 4-man table, and after they sat, I explained to them what was going on. They were a little put out by being denied a decent seat at the counter and took my advice. They walked the 10 feet back to the counter and pulled out the stools, only to be told by mom that those seats were taken. They plopped their butts in the seats anyways, and I'm assuming told mom they'd be happy to move when the owner returned. Mom indignantly took the backpacks and purse from the left 2 seats and pouted for a while, looking around. Daughter came back and a smallish argument ensued, the rednecky couple offering to move when others came by to reclaim their other seats. Mom was very put out and was angry that her scam was not working. She wound up putting both backpacks and daughter's purse on her 2 seats, and the redneck couple ignored her and enjoyed their coffees. Naturally, she left soon after. Redneck couple turned around and gave me a smile and a thumbs up. I responded with devil horns. Yeah, if someone's gonna be like this, entitled, they kind of deserve a slice of humble pie. I don't know why people think that they can do this. You see it at the gym too, same thing. People trying to occupy multiple machines at the same time by throwing a towel on a machine. It's just, we're all paying to use these amenities just like you are. So just be mindful, remember to share. That's it. Health No 4265 responded, OP, on the other hand, snagged a table for 4 for her own personal use when she could have just grabbed a single stool at the counter. Not the Mama 58 responded, I honestly thought OP was going to give them her table, then confront the stool hog for a seat for themselves. Himself? Love that stool hog got her comeuppance, but sheesh, what a circus. Our next story is taking the high road and letting toxic parents orchestrate their own downfall. Okay, so a group of 4 to 5 mothers have actively tried to exclude my 8-year-old daughter. Their children are her best friends. The children love my daughter, and when she comes to school, they all run towards her to hug her and say hello. Basically, she's the popular girl in class and she dislikes all the attention, but it gives her the power to stop bullying. And she does. She's refused to play with anyone who bullies and made an effort to play with the kids being bullied. So the bullying in her class has more or less stopped amongst the girls. However, some of the mothers have taken a dislike to her, or perhaps me. So they've refused to invite her and one other girl from their group, whose mother I'm friends with, to events like birthdays, despite their own kids literally begging for them to invite my daughter. She has also been invited once, and the child's mother told the child to disinvite her. There's always an excuse for them to say no to playdates. Despite this, the kids are still friends. I've chosen to take the high road, so I always tell the girls when they ask that they're always welcome at my place. Sometimes they have asked me to call their parents as they know they don't have plans, and I've done so and told them that unfortunately their parents said no. When they've asked why, I tell them to ask their parents. A couple of times, these parents have actively chosen for their kid to be the only one left at after-school care rather than coming home with us. My daughter's birthday is coming up. I asked her how she wanted to celebrate and with whom. She chose her friends. I texted and asked for a playdate, not mentioning that it was her birthday or that I was taking them to the most popular indoor playground that's quite expensive. All had excuses apart from my friend's daughter. After they declined, I answered, "Oh, what a shame. We were going to go to this playground. Your daughter really seemed to want to go and couldn't remember any plans. She must have forgotten." One backtracked. I know for a fact that the others have had huge tantrums at home. I'm guessing this, along with everything else, is making their kids lose all respect for their parents. I hear from my daughter that her friends are growing more and more resentful of their mothers. I mean, this is the sort of thing they will never forget or forgive. I have, of course, told the children what a shame it is, and I would have loved for them to come. In 2 to 3 years, their mothers will no longer hold any power over who they play with or where. I'm guessing I'm going to be seeing their kids a lot more than they will, and I will go out of my way to display good behavior, like I continue to encourage in my daughter. Yeah, so I mean, if adults want to be petty towards each other, that's your own business, but don't drag your children into this. Let them be friends with who they want to be friends with. If they're truly happy and having fun and enjoying the blessing that is ignorance in youthful childhood, let them do it. Coder Joe 1 responded, I can only guess that the parents are resentful that their kids don't take their bullying cues from their parents anymore. How dare their kids learn to be decent human beings from other people? Spooky Goopy responded, imagine wanting to keep good kids away from your own kid. I'm so excited for all the friends my daughter's going to make. I hope our home will become the hub for all her buddies. I'll be so ready with endless snacks and juice and terrible mom jokes to make everyone groan. Our next story is, maybe you should have read and obeyed the sign. Shortly after COVID hit, Dollar Tree was the only store left in town with hand sanitizer. It smelled like a mix of old tires and bad BO. It was horrendous. I work for a pizza chain. We closed our lobby to customers and put a huge sign in the window asking customers to call us, and we take their order over the phone or bring their existing order out to them. Customers would literally read the sign and come right in anyway, because it couldn't possibly be meant for them. So, being responsible and all, I made sure to supply said sanitizer solely for their use. They would walk in and be like, yes, I'll take a large hand. Looks over and sees the hand sanitizer and puts some on, toss pepperoni. And just like 99% of us, they would sniff their hands right after putting it on. Forget what they were doing for a second and then compose themselves long enough to realize that they're actually being told to exit the lobby and call the store with their order. All the while randomly sniffing their hands and gaffing all over again. It was glorious. It especially made my heart happy if they asked to use the restroom first, to obviously wash their hands, and I got to tell them no. They were stuck with that god-awful smell, and I like to think that they would not get a chance to wash it off before eating their pizza. Okay, so maybe I'm in the 1% that's being referred to here by OP, but do 99% of people really sniff their hands after applying hand sanitizer? Why would you do that? Literally just inhaling fumes of rubbing alcohol. Ugh. The date responded, At least you didn't have to worry about customers wanting to take home bottles of hand sanitizer from the counter. Bonus points for teaching them to read signs. Carnivore CD replied, slightly off topic, but when my former house was listed for sale, because of COVID, realtors did not accompany potential buyers when they looked at the house. One of those people took the soap dispenser from the bathroom. It wasn't even a fancy one, just Dial with foam soap. I couldn't believe it and kept checking to see if it was knocked off the sink or something. Nope, they definitely took it. Our next story is On 1 and 3. Yesterday, I went to see a musical. It was a great performance, and the production used a lot of inventive projection and lighting effects. My enjoyment of these was affected by the lady in the seat directly in front of me videoing parts of the performance on her phone with the screen brightness turned up to 11. So when it came to the big final clap along number, I clapped along with my friends rather than closer to her ear than I would have otherwise. Also, whilst everyone else clapped on beats 2 and 4, I clapped on 1 and 3. Okay, so I'm pretty sure you can't do this, the video part at least. So yeah, instead of I get it, you want to be petty and ruin the video, but yeah, maybe let event staff know so that you can really drop the hammer. Hey Nani Anonymous responded, videoing the performance is illegal, and there's usually an announcement before the show about it. If this happens again, get an usher. Maybe you could get their phone taken away for the duration of the show. Needleworker Big 3980 responded, I'm not in the USA. Here, it's illegal to video an entire song or full performance. Short clips and photos are allowed if it's permitted by the theater/promotion team, but there are rules on what you can then do with said media. It was a small, local theater, and they didn't have any signs up saying it wasn't permitted. That said, the way this person was going about it was in a way that breached all local audience etiquette. Our next story is, now I'm just gonna park there all the time. About a month ago, I moved into a residential neighborhood, and it's important to note a few things as you read my story. My house does not have a driveway or garage, so I have to rely on street parking. This is not a gated/HOA governed area, and there are no signs, restrictions, or permits whatsoever for street parking. This area is not walking distance to anything but other homes, so anyone parking on the street is either a resident of the area or a visitor of a resident. No random people are trying to find short-term parking. It's a quiet neighborhood, so I can usually find street parking in front of or close to my house. However, there's one neighbor that lives 4 houses down that feels that they own the public sidewalk in front of their property and puts down cones to block off space that would fit about 3 cars. I refuse to give them the benefit of the doubt that they do this to save spots for themselves because I take my dog on frequent walks and I've never seen them use these spots to park. Additionally, they have a long driveway that never has any cars in it and a detached garage, so they already have ample parking for their personal vehicles that I've never seen. On that note, I've literally never even seen these neighbors, other than occasionally seeing lights coming from their backyard during nighttime walks. I would probably assume that there is no one living there. Shades are always closed in the front windows and never see any inside lights on from the front. One day I drove home and there was no parking available except in front of their house. It was late and I didn't want to park a block away just because of this entitled house, so I simply moved a couple of their cones to the sidewalk and parked my car. The next morning, I saw that they had moved the cones back to the street behind my car, which I had to move again to get my car out. They definitely noticed and acted upon my legal street parking, but just shrugged it off. A week or so later, I couldn't find parking, so the exact same situation happened. Moved the cones and parked. The next day, I simply moved the cones they replaced behind my car and went about my day. Yesterday, I had the situation happen yet again. Note that this is only the 3rd time in a month that I've moved the cones to park there. I take my dog on a walk this morning and I see a note on my windshield. It's not even a handwritten note and printed on a paper. This plate number has been turned in to parking enforcement. We encourage you to park in front of your own residence for the consideration of your neighbors. This note ticked me off. First of all, if you believe in consideration of your neighbors, then you shouldn't be blocking access to public parking spots where your neighbors can park. Secondly, now you're threatening me for parking legally? You want to start this fight? I will make you pay. First revenge. I called parking enforcement myself and explained the situation, and the lady laughed and said that my neighbors had no authority to give me a notice like that, as I assumed. They also gave me a number to a Bureau of Street Services investigator who can come take a look and then issue them a citation. Lucky for them that they're currently closed for the week as it's Friday afternoon, but will be calling again Monday morning. Second revenge. I live with my girlfriend who has her car parked in front of our house. I moved her car in front of the house with the cones to now make it 2 cars they didn't want there. Added bonus is that she has a Tesla, so there will be cameras in case they try to do anything to either of our cars. Potential third revenge. If the citation situation doesn't happen or work out for whatever reason, I'm considering purchasing the ugliest, oldest, cheapest vehicle I can find and register it as a planned non-operational vehicle with the DMV, and then keep it forever parked in front of their house. All things considered, I see no apparent reason why they wouldn't want to have anyone park in front of their house other than simple aesthetics. They don't use the spots to park their own vehicles, and we would have never had random people wanting to park there on a regular basis. Update. I arrived home on Sunday night and there was plenty of parking available and cones were back in their usual places. Since I would be filing a complaint the next day, I decided it would be best to not move the cones and park there so the investigator could see the situation in its full glory. Called the Bureau of Street Services this morning and it was a bit underwhelming. Gave the representative a brief rundown of the situation and they asked for the address of the offender. Then they asked if I wanted to provide my contact info or remain anonymous. I thought about it for a second and figured there would be nothing to gain from sharing my own info, so I decided to stay anonymous. They said they would send an investigator and that was it. We'll continue to monitor the situation, but not sure if this will take days, weeks, or months. Yeah, can't wait to hear the sequel. Something tells me that we are not done hearing about the escapades of residential parking. Filmiac responded, "Well handled. I had kinda sorta the reverse situation. Very narrow neighborhood street, parking only allowed on one side our house is on. Our next door neighbors, who we'd gotten along with until we didn't, decided to build an unpermitted fence in front of their house, except they built all the way to the street. I don't think there was 4 inches of space between the edge of the curb and their fence, so suddenly their guests didn't want to park in front of their house, because if there was someone in the passenger seat, they could not get out of the car. And the fence was so high and so close to the curb on an already very narrow street, it was very difficult to back into a space there and get a good angle to park close to the curb. Yes, the fence was completely out of code, but I do my best to live and let live. Except they started parking in front of our house, meaning we didn't have anywhere to park except in front of theirs, and their hassle became our hassle. No garage, no driveway option for us. So I went over and asked them to please stop parking in front of our house. At which point, they complained about how hard it was to park in front of their own house because of their new fence, and it also made their dogs bark. So I replied, "You've taken your problem and solved it by making our problem. That's not okay. If your fence is causing you problems, then you can deal with it and park there anyway, or take down the fence, which is not built to code. And if you do neither of those things, I'll be on the phone with the city's building department tomorrow morning to fix it for you." They hated us after that, but they started parking in front of their home again, and they were not our neighbors for much longer, thankfully. The new folks in that same house are wonderful, and they replaced the fence with a much more reasonable one that solved everything. Our next story is Revenge at an Annoying Guy at the Bus. I was going back home from hanging out with my friends when this guy, we'll call him A for annoying, sits next to me. A opens up Instagram and starts listening to some songs at max volume, annoying all passengers in the bus and me too. I politely ask him to turn it down, but he says, "I don't care about you, little kid." I had enough of him, so I opened up Geometry Dash on my phone and, at max volume, started playing some levels with very loud music. A was as angry as ever, and he even turned his own volume down slightly, but I kept playing and kept annoying him. As soon as he left, I put my phone back in my pocket and continued riding. Don't be a Richard in public transport. So I'm not familiar with the sound effects of Geometry Dash, but I feel like any kind of loud music and zany sound effects, bang boom, bango bango, that's pretty apropos in this situation. So yeah, I agree, you reap what you sow. Pluto's Darling responded, "On a long commute, the very important businessman next to me conducted a very loud phone conversation on speaker. I finally put my book away and played Insane Clown Posse on speaker." And Lumpy Marsupial 1559 responded, "I hate that," which is why, leaning over close to the phone and saying loudly, "I don't know if they told you, but you're on speakerphone really loud on a tram, and about 40 people can hear all of your conversation, just letting you know." My favorite was the time the woman on the other end started tearing a strip off the guy before he could turn off the speaker. So we all got to hear the start of that, and watch the end as he changed color, did a bunch "yep, sure," and apologized. Our next story is sabotaging an ex-girlfriend through email spam. Had the worst, most controlling boyfriend ever. A year of dating him and screaming at me and him saying he would unalive himself if we broke up, then I finally got out. A couple months later, I learned that he had slept with his little brother's fiancée while living with them rent-free. She also once answered my ex's phone when I was feeling hopeless and dejected by him to tell me I was being annoying. So I kept tabs on them. The girl is all sunshine and rainbows, with him acting like he didn't F her fiancé's brother in their bed. I realized she had Etsy and Facebook shops with her items sold on there, her email on full display. If I'm bored, I sign it up for spam emails, STD emails, insurance quotes, and finally found an email site that sends thousands of emails in an hour, allegedly. I noticed her shop is on a short break, and I can't help but smirk thinking it worked, and the revenge is getting served cold to her, and in turn, my ex. Easy as it is nowadays to flag email addresses and senders and, report to spam and all of that kind of stuff, I do think that it will also seep into the ads that pop up on her computer, so this may be a longer lasting prank than you might think. Next Split 2683 responded, "You must have a lot of time on your hands to continue stalking. I mean, keeping tabs on your ex's girlfriend. Best thing you can do for yourself is to live your best life and leave them alone to continue their misery together. Ever wonder why your ex stays hidden from you? Good luck." Avery Sneaky Snack responded, "She's just the one that posts more and he's the one that stays hidden. Not from me, but in general and is inactive. So it's easier to do and hardly takes any time. It's fun." Our next story is, "You want to cut me off as we're dropping off our kids at school?" Some background. You turn off a main road and have about a quarter mile before turning right into the drop-off area. I make my turn and a mom in a minivan turns after me and cuts me off, and has to slam on the brakes at the stop sign. We turn, drop off our kids. It's a combo middle school and high school, and my high school daughter recognizes one of the two occupants of the minivan. We leave and are back on the main road, speed limit 65. The mom in the minivan is still riding my butt when I remember that my front and back windows need to be cleaned. It might be minor, but watching her back off brought me joy. Now, this is actually a classic prank for tailgaters. If they get too close, just activate your windshield wiper fluid and watch after about 5 to 10 seconds, all of a sudden their windshield wipers start going because your crap is getting all up in their windshield. Yeah, love it. Harmless in the grand scheme of things. Honestly, you're doing them a favor by providing some cleanliness for their own windshields. LAI Pro commented, "I lobbed an egg out of the sunroof years ago, and the bumper humper behind switched their wipers on smearing egg all over their windscreen." And our next story is Revenge on Stepfather. When I was 10, my mom met my stepfather, and they basically got married right away. I hated him. He was an abusive alcoholic and a heavy smoker, and he despised me because I kept trying to tell my mother how awful he was. He had my mom so manipulated that she blamed me for him being an alcoholic because I upset him so he needed to drink. Years go by, I'm 13 and more confident, and I can't even remember what he did, but I schemed for a good couple of days. I went through the entire house, top to bottom, and found every lighter and match and chucked them over the fence. He kept his lighters in our sunroom when he was home, so I knew he had none on him. He was such a heavy chain smoker, and I successfully enraged him. Seeing him sprint around the house with the cigarette and no way to light it was a highlight in my young life I will never forget. Tread cautiously, depriving an addict of their nicotine, but yeah, this sounds like something that teenage me would probably do as well. CDBCCSB commented, "My brother would take a pack of cigarettes, lay them all out. Half had a wooden match shoved in the end and tapped in. The other half, he would take a pin and poke a row of holes in the length. Then he'd put all the cigarettes back in the pack. The smoker would never know if this one was going to explode in flames as the wooden match ignited, or if they'd burn their fingers trying to get one lit that had no draw." Our next story is Adios, Sucker. My workplace was headed for the porcelain, but it all hit the fan while I was on vacation for my honeymoon. My boss was transferring to another location, and her replacement came in trashing all of her hard work to get our location running somewhat better. And there was talk of me being written up for something out of the scope of my responsibilities. I was a contributing factor, but not the sole cause. My hours were also changed, and I was never notified, so I'm refusing the change. New boss believed fellow staff were responsible for telling me, and that's garbage. So while off, I had 2 interviews and an offer, which I accepted. Today, she's fake nice to me, thinking I don't know all of the nonsense that went on while I was off, and she tried to explain it and justify it. Finally, she starts talking the future plans for all of us and then asks me what I had in mind or the prior manager and I were working on. So I drop my 2 weeks notice on her. My future endeavors will be elsewhere, darling. Let me also add that my employer has had a mass exodus, 20 plus, in the region I work in due to upper management treating us all like dirt. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. That's one of my favorite quotes of all time. Shout it loud and proud from the rooftops. You play stupid games, you earn stupid prizes. So, hey, move on to bigger, better things. Nobody's baby daddy responded, "This crap is why I'll never do corporate work again. I now rely on my trade skills. I did trade skill crap for a corp for 5 years. I admit that I make a heck of a lot less money, but there's zero political crap, no clicks, and I enjoy working as much as possible. There's no managers, assistant managers, sub-assistant managers, supervisors, assistant supervisors, team leads, assistant team leads, group leaders, assistant group leaders. You get the idea. Life is good outside of the bullcrap." Our next story is, evil teacher fails me for a sound clip she found repulsive, so I put it everywhere. This occurred way back in my junior year of high school, around 2002. I was in a computer class. It was a very general class where we learned how to type, but also got a little familiarity with stuff like Adobe Photoshop and Music Studio. The teacher who normally taught the class had a baby prior to the semester that I took the class, so a substitute teacher covered her entire maternity leave. The substitute was a complete bench. The fun and entertainment I got from the original teacher's typing class that I had taken the semester before was now replaced by an evil woman who expected us to be professionals at programs we had only just learned about. Nobody in the class had higher than a B average. She dumped on my first Photoshop assignment because she didn't like the subject matter. It was a mech robot with a Gundam-inspired energy sword that I drew and colored by hand, taking me nearly a month to complete. I used Photoshop to clean up some of the rough edges to make it look even more realistic, a feat that should have been awarded high marks, but because she hated the subject matter, it got a D+. The next week, we started our segment on Music Studio. Her assignment was to create a music clip that sounded weird or funny. I found a synth wave in the program labeled Final Crash and played it to myself. A descending crescendo followed by final beat and an upbeat chord. Using the software, I created a loop of this sound clip and reversed it, playing the sound forward and reversed in repeating patterns for about 15 seconds. My fellow students found the resulting music to be hilarious, but the teacher absolutely hated it, even going into dry heaves at the sound of it. She gave me a 0 on the assignment and threatened me with detention if I ever played the sound again. I was already on the brink of failing my class prior to this because of the way she was grading my work, so this was the determining factor for me to take revenge. I didn't mind a few detentions from a teacher I disliked if it meant making her life a living heck for a few weeks as a taste of the heck she put me through. A friend of mine worked for the IT of the school as part of his aspirations to get a computer science degree. I gave him the offending sound clip and he notified the teacher that he needed to perform an update on her computer during her lunch break. My class was after lunch, so I got to see my revenge in all of its glory. My friend went into the sound files of her computer and replaced all of her notification sounds with a 3-second piece of this sound clip. Every time she received an email, instant message, or any other warning from her computer, this sound would play at nearly maximum volume. The added bonus being that to prevent students from tampering with teachers' computers, they needed to input an IT password to access the control panels and turn it off. It was an IT password they didn't share with substitute teachers because of access to grading and transcripts. Substitute teacher had a complete meltdown after just 2 emails from IT about the computer update. She sent me to the office and tried to have me expelled because of this sound. Our principal laughed her out of the office. Substitute teacher unplugged her computer and took emails and instant messages on her phone for the entire duration of the final 2 weeks of class. The other students in my class used to play the sound clip from their computers to annoy her. We even managed to get the sound clip played during morning announcements, which I can only imagine made her throw things at the television. When the original teacher returned from her maternity leave at the beginning of my senior year, she changed my grade in the previous semester's class from a D to an A+ after reviewing my assignments. Revenge achieved. Also, Benchy Substitute was asked not to return to my school district as a substitute for the rest of her teaching career. I've never really known a substitute teacher to be just so hardcore. Normally they're like, all right, do what you want. I'm getting paid to just basically monitor the class. Which leads me to believe that this woman is probably a former teacher, full-time teacher, that is now an also-ran for acting like this in other work environments. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the double reverse synth sound effect. That actually sounds pretty cool. Aggravating Focus 90 responded, I wish you had access to her phone too. That bench doesn't deserve petty revenge. She deserves to be nuked. And Dr. Deadpool replied, actually, about 2 weeks into summer vacation, we emailed the sound clip to the DJ at her favorite radio station and got the clip played on the air at random hours of the day for about 3 weeks. I'm sure this benchy substitute will never want to teach computer class ever again. Our next story is, want to be an arrogant Karen? Enjoy the Snow White remake. So, a friend of ours is a great guy with 3 daughters that are good kids, in spite of their judgmental, stuck-up, judgmental Karen of a mother. He's aware of her actions but wants to be around his girls full-time. I heard the girls talking about the advertising, how they love princess movies, and an evil thought crossed my mind. So, I pre-purchased tickets to that horrible Snow White remake. I get a good discount. Bought the girls Snow White posters, talked up the Snow White story, they ate it up, made a production of presenting the girls prepaid tickets at a theater 30 miles away. Now she's stuck either preventing the girls that are completely jazzed about the movie while holding tickets, or driving 30 miles over, buying her own ticket, sitting through that horrible movie, and driving 30 miles home. Her husband is marginally in on it. He has work plans, so it's all on her to waste a day. If the girls really like it, I'll buy more tickets so they can see it again. Koozie407 replied to this, I'm all for some good petty revenge, but when you involve kids, it's kinda not cool. If she decides not to take them, the only ones suffering in this situation are the kids. Our next story is, give me detention for leaving school grounds? Enjoy your daily lunch break interruptions. So this happened a while ago by now, but during my last 2 months in high school, I found myself at the wrong end of an authority-tripping teacher. During a lunch break, me and a friend crossed the street to buy a small prize for a quiz at the end of a presentation we had to give that afternoon. We left the school grounds for 3 minutes tops, at which point the teacher supervising during the lunch break that day awaited our return to give us detention for leaving the school grounds without parental permission. Unless you went home to eat, you couldn't leave the premise without a note. But at the time, me and my friend were both 18, so legally adults, so we could sign our own stuff as we had no legal guardian anymore. We pointed out how stupid that detention was given, that we could literally write and sign our own permission note, but he insisted on the attention. So from that day on, I made a note, signed it, and presented it to that teacher every single lunch break for the remaining 2 months of school. I insisted on getting his signature on it, so no detention-eager teacher would get me in trouble because I didn't inform a teacher of my permission or whatever reason they might have. When another teacher answered the door to the teacher lounge, I insisted that I had an important note for that teacher to sign. Of course, they soon knew exactly what would be in that note, but without getting to check it, they couldn't verify it wasn't actually important this time, and I wouldn't let them look at it to verify. I didn't get that teacher to sign every single day, but the many times I did, the frustrated look on his face was worth all the trouble of writing those daily notes. American adults, the first 2 to 3 months after they first turn 18, oh boy, yeah, look out. This checks out. Melodic Telephone 909 replied, Yo, the teacher wasn't power tripping. If something happened to you during those 3 minutes, the school would be liable. It's a huge legal issue, hence why you needed a signed form saying that basically you were no longer in the school's care during your off-campus lunches, and they were no longer liable for anything that happened to you during that time. Our next story is Petty Revenge on Toxic Ex-Wife. Back in 2014, I finally split with my toxic ex-wife who'd been financially abusive, isolated me from friends and family, and basically gaslit me into thinking I was the problem. House sold, assets sorted, divorce finalized, job done, I move on. So does she, with a former friend who I'd always had suspicions about. Never proved it though. Early 2023, I get an email from Curry's confirming my order. I hadn't ordered anything from Curry's and initially thought it was spam. Curiously, I clicked the link and my ex had spent the best part of $1,000, her own money, not mine, on electrical items for her kitchen, but neglected to check the number linked to the account. Can only assume mine was on there from a cooker we had ordered back in 2012. So I followed the link, looked at the order, and canceled it. I mean, it was the smallest and pettiest thing I could do. And given, as far as I know, she still works with important financial data for a major UK bank, you'd think the least she could do is check the numbers? I could take or leave this one. Yeah, it's a small revenge in the grand scheme of things, but if you've just split up, it's time to start creating that separation and moving on, right? Kent Biker replied, "My son went through the exact same thing. She was a narcissist of the highest order. Now, with someone else, new house and car, and both have really good, well-paid jobs. No revenge as of yet, but revenge is a dessert best served cold, and she must be thoroughly ticked off that she's doing well and is happy. I guess that's as good as revenge. Glad you've got it sorted." Our next story is 2 for 1 Petty Revenge. In my early 20s, I decided to divorce my ex, and throughout and after the divorce, she made my life miserable. I got a 2-year degree and moved to an engineering company, and my life started to take shape. This made her double down as my new wife and I bought our first house, the kids learned to love my now wife, etc. The only downside was my boss. He almost cost me my job by saying, "I don't get what the big deal is," when I came back from leave after my wife's miscarriage. He also refused to support me in attempting to get tuition reimbursement from the company, saying that I could never pass engineering school and other hateful crap. Funnily enough, he was wrong, and a future boss saw my potential, and I did get that degree. As I approached graduation, I was reflecting on how I had made it so far. That's when the idea struck me. I sent them both an invitation to my graduation and a note that I looked forward to seeing them. For my boss, I included notes about the new role I landed and how important he was to my success. To my ex, I added that while there, we wanted to discuss with her a move to a nicer neighborhood, the kids really loving the house, etc. Truly, living well with grace is the best revenge. Absolutely, absolutely. Your haters will never miss an episode of the next chapter of your life. I promise you, they're tuned in, and when they see that you're happy, they in turn feel jealous and envious, and they're miserable as a result. So just live your best life. Expensive Signal 8623 replied, "This is the kind of story I love to read on Reddit. You haven't done anything to hurt anyone. If they're kind-hearted, then they rejoice in your success. If they're vengeful and vindictive, then this really bites at them. Either way, your life is so much better and you've hurt no one. Congratulations and enjoy your success. Living well is the best revenge." Daikon Necessary 9969 replied, "Ironically, he made it possible. I started learning under a mentor engineer. When we got slammed and his bonus was looking shaky, I did a small project and presented it to him to see if I could take on engineering tasks. He raked my work over the coals and was a snarky Richard about it. That work later justified my reimbursement. So I wasn't even lying. I just left out that I really despise his hateful butt." Our next story is, "Pull down my buddy's pants, you get it too." When I was in 7th grade, my friend, let's call him Ashu, was the nicest guy you ever met. All of us in the class pretty much got along, except for the 3 mean girls. Let's call them Penny, Monica, and Julie. Penny had it out for me because I was painfully shy around girls, so she was constantly embarrassing me in front of the whole class. She also had it out for Ashu. I'm guessing because he was so nice and also shy. One day in gym class, Penny and her 2 partners in crime were standing behind Ashu, and they thought it would be great fun to pull his shorts down, only they got his underpants too. Oh, how they laughed. My 2 buddies and I decided to get them back. The next day, we stood behind Penny and the others. As soon as the gym teacher's back was turned, we pulled all 3 of their pants down. I had Penny. I made sure I got her panties as well. Oh, how they screamed and cried at the gym teacher. His comment was simply, "Payback is heck, Penny. Now get back in line. If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. Karma's a boomerang. Don't dish what you can't take." All the cliches come to mind here. I don't have to harp over it too much longer. Let's see what the comments say. Expensive Signal 8623 replied, "If this was during the 70s or 80s, you can definitely believe that the teacher turned a blind eye. It was ruthless during that era if you were the victim of bullying." Our next story is, "Quitting would be doing you a favor? Fine, I'll do you a favor." So here's some backstory. I, 31-year-old male, was in Navy aviation and used my GI Bill to get my A&P license. For those of you who don't know, FAA certification required to work on non-military aircraft. Small Air had a new boss, applied, got the job. Small operation, maybe 10 mechanics total. I grew up with an older crowd, so I typically get along great with people in their 60s. I've watched all the old shows, know their music, etc. They usually love me, except for one guy. Let's call him Ray Ray. Well, Ray Ray was a grumpy stick in the mud. For some reason, he hated me. Maybe because of my annoying personality. Mind you, if someone is uncomfortable with my jokes or anything, I'm respectful and stop or keep it away from them, depending on what it is and what they ask. At the end of the day, I'm there to work. Nothing I do is dangerous or ridiculously offensive, but for those of you who know military guys, you know what I'm talking about. I get my work done, I do it correctly, I own up to my mistakes, and I ask for help when I need it. Ray Ray never addressed me directly, but I could tell he wasn't my biggest fan, so I did my best to avoid him. Well, over the next 2 years, he made it my mission to nitpick and find reasons to complain to try and get me fired, double-checking my work, not QA, to look for mistakes, re-inspecting things I signed off. I reported him to my supervisor and boss. Thanks for letting me know, I'll take care of it. Just ignore him. Fun fact, they never did. Boss, old Marine, got along with him at first. In fact, during the interview, him and the supervisor explicitly informed me, Ray Ray is a grumpy old man and has a habit of finding a reason to hate someone, then trying to get them fired. I appreciated their honesty and typically steered clear of Ray Ray, and when I had to interact with him, I was professional. Boss seemed to brush off complaints from Ray Ray, which made me feel like he had my back. There was a guy a few years younger than me, let's call him Javier, but had been there longer. We became friends and he showed me how to do certain inspections. I specialize in electrical. Because of our specialty, we became the dynamic duo. We volunteered to go fix problems out in the heat or rain and would work through lunch and break to get overtime until it was resolved. Then things with boss changed. Authorized overtime. Yelled at me on the hangar floor for working too much. This happened 2 times during overtime season. Later, Javier and I had an issue that just wouldn't go away. Boss was no help, and neither was the supervisor. Boss suggested we contact the manufacturer. We did, got a recommendation, and tried. Boss told us the manufacturer was stupid and they just build the product, they don't fix it. Then told us we wasted our time and shouldn't have bothered. He then gave us a suggestion. Javier and I tried to explain fluid laws and explained why his suggestion was not physically possible to have been the issue. He demanded we do it. Javier and I agreed to do it. We agreed with each other that if it worked, we would apologize to boss and ask why he knew it would work. If not, we were clocking out and leaving. We ended up clocking out and leaving. Too much to include also happened. I had been applying elsewhere already, but hadn't heard back. One day, Javier and I were working on a plane with the required item, not due for inspection. Finally, close up the bird and get it ready to fly. We see that Ray Ray wrote up a bullcrap discrepancy. It didn't affect airworthiness, so we deleted the write-up. No big deal. Much drama followed, but ended up resulting in my firing a few days later. Or so boss thought. He called me in and proceeded to lay out all the reasons I was fired. The main thing to take away from his side is that he told me that when Javier and I walked off the job, he should have quit because we would be doing him a freaking favor. I responded calmly, but not with professional language, that 1. I had reported Ray Ray for targeting me and nothing was ever done. 2. They warned me about him when they hired me, so they knew he was an issue and never did anything about it. 3. I always changed my behavior if I was asked and tried my best to keep it away from those who didn't care for it. By the way, just Ray Ray. And 4. A few more, but not important for the story. Boss realized that firing me could possibly give me legal recourse due to 1 and 2, then told me to get back to work. Not 5 minutes after I left his office, I got a call for a job. I accepted on the spot, and I told Javier, aware of my conversation with boss, that I was going to do the boss a favor. Freak boss. I would grab my crap over the weekend and come in to quit Monday. The next day, I realized that didn't work out logistically, so I packed my box, got a parts guy to load it in my truck with a forklift, and went to drop it off at the new job. No 2 weeks, just packed my crap and left. I texted Javier and told him I would be back to drop off my uniforms and airport badge. He told me that I would have to give it to him in the parking lot because I wasn't allowed in the building's hangar anymore. Apparently, someone saw me leaving with my box and asked boss, did OP quit? I saw him take his box and leave. Boss came out to the hangar floor absolutely enraged. freak that mother freaker, I don't want to see that piece of crap back in my freaking building, etc. Javier got in trouble for going through my box. For non-mechanics, this is a thing. Basically, just making sure you aren't taking company property when you leave. He didn't care because he hated boss and it was worth it to see him that ticked. Parts guy got in trouble for using the forklift without asking boss, but same thing. I dropped off my badge and uniform to Javier, who said that boss locked himself in the office, then went home early. I thought that was the end of it, but then I hear from Javier that after my leaving, he keeps talking crap. So I inform Javier, Andy, Robbie, and Quentin about job openings at my new place. Quentin gets hired about 3 months later, and apparently boss still has a hard-on for me. So now, every time there's an opening, I refer all my old coworkers. Hopefully I can poach every decent mechanic he has, making him look bad to his boss for the turnover during his time in his position. I've been at my new place for about 8 months, and I occasionally hear from old coworkers that boss will bench about me. Apparently, I'm living rent-free in his head. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Quentin said that during his exit interview that he hated me and that if he ever saw me in public, he would knock me out. I pray that he does. Please, for the love of God, assault me in public, in front of witnesses. I would love the lawsuit. Edit. Just figured out how to do this. In Quentin's exit interview, boss told Quentin, quote, "Thanks for at least giving me a 2 weeks notice, unlike that mother freaker OP. I swear to God, if I ever see that guy out and about, I'll knock his little bench butt out." Also, apparently this got lost when I originally tried to add it, but in my state, my understanding is that you have up to 1 year after leaving a job to file a complaint with the labor board for harassment and retaliation. I have everything documented, so depending on if I hear about him talking more crap, I may just file a complaint considering that I had to quit because he ignored me repeatedly reporting Ray Ray. What a crap show. What a crap show. Glad you were able to get out. I mean, it doesn't really sound like it was necessarily on your own terms, but man, I don't care what the salary is, I ain't working there. Good enough for government work, responded. What a douche canoe of a former boss. Obviously, Ray Ray has some dirt or power that keeps him employed. That or boss and Ray Ray are super chummy. Seems crazy that boss would be so worked up, but glad you're gone and in a better place. Buttface Supreme 01 replied, I think it was just that Ray Ray's been there for like 22 years and had knowledge. Kinda stupid though, because he's close to retiring, but they would rather cater to him than keep the hard-working young guys happy. My new place is so much better. Contract negotiations just went through, and I'm making almost double what I was making there, so I keep getting any openings yet texts about once a week. Alright everybody, that is all the time we have for today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and comment down below, and if you want to check out any of our other videos, click that video on the right. All that being said, I will see you all next time.